Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Real Deal, your source for spoiler free movie reviews. I'm Nathaniel Ahart.
I'm Alex Kent.
And I'm Jacob Towell.
Today, we are going to be reviewing Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League that just released on HBO Max, I think a couple weekends ago. But first, we want to introduce a new segment today called Head to Head, where we hit movies against each other and talk about whether they're better or worse. And in this case, we'll be talking about Batman versus Superman versus Suicide Squad, and which one is worse? Now, what do you guys think? It's been a while.
That's a difficult choice. That's a difficult choice because these are two terrible movies that I hate so much because I've read so many of these comics specifically. And it's hard to choose which one is worse. Because on one hand, we have Batman vs. Superman, one of the most overhyped movies of all time, and it used a lot of the best comic stories and smushed them into one very small movie and ruined them all in one take. And then we have Suicide Squad, which I don't even... it's hard to even remember that movie, aside from some of the parts I hated. Like the villain and pretty much the plot in general. And Jared Leto's Joker, and
for the wrong reasons.
But the thing is, both of these movies had some parts that I liked, like Will Smith as Deadshot. I thought was great. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn was obviously great. Viola Davis was great in Suicide Squad, and Batman vs Superman had. Actually, I don't think it had anything. You know what? I'm gonna go with Batman vs Superman. Batman vs Superman did not have anything I liked. I really do not like that movie. I hate it. Actually, you know what? I will say Ben Affleck, or Batman in that movie, the warehouse scene, and I guess Batman in general in that movie is probably the only thing I liked.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm going to start off by saying, and we'll get into Justice League, the Snyder cut later. I would say Justice League Whedon is worse than both of those.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Alone, I would say Suicide Squad is worse just due to the fact that, at least with Batman vs. Superman, we had a director who tried to give a serious effort. Yeah. Suicide Squad, I know David Ayer's a great director. He's made Training Day.
Oh my God, I forgot. I even forgot he directed that movie. I was trying to remember the director of Suicide Squad. I can't believe it.
And then he directed another really good movie, Fury, the war movie with Brad Pitt a few years back. So Suicide Squad, thinking it would be very fun. The soundtrack was my favorite thing, but otherwise, Jared Leto was obnoxious as the Joker. And he's another great actor, just given terrible material with that film. He was just a punky Joker. I've never seen anything like that. It was just terrible. Batman vs. Superman.
Damaged on his forehead.
Batman vs. Superman, I saw that in theaters, and I thought the fight scenes were cool.
Yeah.
Yes, Martha, the scene is ridiculous.
Martha.
I'm not saying this movie's any good, but I respected the fact that we saw Superman and Batman. I know fighting it out was not as good as we thought it'd be. It was still pretty bad.
Right.
It was still cool to see them treated, I guess, in a more mature way, just handled wrongly, and execution wasn't perfect. But Suicide Squad, I just sat in theaters for 2 hours waiting for it to end. And then even during Halloween, the Harley Quinn costumes, they were everywhere. So there was no way to avoid this movie.
That was because of Birds of Prey, too, which was also terrible.
I think it was very good. But I'll say this. I do agree with you, Jacob. I also will say I thought Jeremy Irons was great as Alfred.
Oh, yeah, he was great as Alfred, too. He definitely such a weird and great casting that it ended up to be.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's just
so younger.
Yeah, and I think with that movie, besides him and Ben Affleck and a couple of good scenes, I felt the same. Alex felt about Suicide Squad, where I just wanted that movie to end.
Yes.
There was so many points where I was just so infuriated by what they were doing with the script, especially one namesake, Doomsday, and it was just absolutely atrocious. I could, and then of course the Martha thing.
Well, wait, a huge thing, yeah. Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor, guys. That was when I first started hating this movie. The second he came on screen, I was like, I need this movie to end. This is not Lex Luthor. Smallville on CW had a better Lex Luthor than this movie did. I don't. That's the only casting I'm never going to understand. Along with Amy Adams as Lois Lane, also terrible. I really don't like her as Lois Lane, but we'll talk about that for Snyder.
We'll say that for a little bit. Yeah. But it just didn't work at all. Everything they were trying to hit with it is one of the worst movies I've seen in the past few years. Honestly, I hate it with my every being, and I never want to see it again. And supposedly, there's a new Suicide Squad trailer for the Suicide Squad.
Yes, the Suicide Squad from James Gunn. I watched the trailer today, and James Gunn. I actually just recently rewatched the Guardians movies because I'm kind of just doing a Marvel rewatch with my girlfriend who hasn't seen any of them. Two really great movies, and when I was watching this trailer, you could see that James Gunn's touch, but also at the same time, I don't know, it might be another flop. I mean, there was a 30-second segment committed to just the most childish joke ever that just made me cringe, and I have no hopes for this movie, but we'll see. Having no hopes might make it better.
I guess we'll just have to wait. And on that, our next segment is going to bring us right into our initial thoughts on the Zack Snyder Justice League cut.
Got your personal references, high school diploma or equivalent?
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
It's right there.
Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
We taught him how to hit a baseball. How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
My new dad teaches me all kinds of stuff.
I wouldn't use this one.
He helps me with my decision making.
Ever.
And he's even teaching me how to drive.
And that's why cars have bumpers.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Real Deal. Today, we will be reviewing the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Now, the original theatrical release of Justice League came out in 2017, and unfortunately, Zack Snyder had to step down due to the tragedy in his family, the loss of his daughter, and Joss Whedon stepped in, and some may say that we got a very butchered project, and now we're here 4 years later, and almost 4 years later. And we have what is considered to be the definitive version of this film.
I want to start off by saying, because I saw the Whedon cut in theaters, and that was a big mistake, arguably the worst movie I've ever seen in theaters.
Whoa, that far?
I would go that far. I was sitting there, and the intro is Batman on a roof taking down some random criminal, then the words of Justice League appear, then 2 hours later you get nothing out of it. And that's all I'm going to say on that one, just because it doesn't really deserve recognition. But seeing the fact that Snyder got to, I guess, fulfill his dream of making the Justice League movie his way, 4 hours of content, and that's really unheard of nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
But he finally got to make it, and it's actually quality stuff. And we'll get into that later, but I'm really glad that I got to see it, because if the only Justice League live-action movie I got was the Whedon cut, that's not a good way to present Batman and Superman. My last name is Kent, too, so I love Superman with that bias, and that was just awful stuff, the Whedon cut.
But one thing I'll say is I think the fact we've never seen a filmmaker get this much autonomy over a project on this massive of a scale. So I think more than anything, I appreciate what they're doing, because it's great that a filmmaker can do that at all, especially with such a huge budget. I don't know if that necessarily means that it's like a great movie, but I appreciated that for, you know, what it means for cinema.
Yeah, the studio said to the director, we understand what you went through, but we're going to let you finish this. And that's just a great story, feel-good story and redemption in his life, even though he'll never fully recover from that loss. But things are looking better with just the film being made.
Yeah, so I had never seen the Whedon cut. I had pretty much looked up like every single scene I possibly could on like YouTube and seen all I really needed to see to know that this was a terrible movie. And the Snyder cut, when I put it on and watching it with fresh eyes because I'd never seen the Whedon cut, I like when it finished and I watched it in one sitting, I really did think it was a good, like a really solid superhero movie, and better than a lot of Marvel movies that have been made before, I would say. I like, you know, I mean, Iron Man 2 and 3, Captain Marvel. There's a lot of movies I think this movie tops by far. And it's also just a little different because it's not as campy as superhero movies usually are. And usually when they're not as campy, they tend to be worse. But this one actually figured that out somehow. Somehow Snyder finally figured out how to do a non-campy version. Well, I mean, I guess Ezra Miller was the only campy part of this whole movie. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
I will say, like, I think we can all agree that the worst part of this movie were the visuals.
Yeah.
And because like DC's always been known to, you know, have little subpar special effects, but especially, you know, paired with
Snyder.
Zack's nauseating slow-mo, which could have, like, you easily could have cut a half hour out of the movie.
Exactly.
If it just weren't
Exactly 10.2% of this movie is in slow motion.
I was going to say that.
That is a fact, and that is a fact. 10.2%.
It probably is. I mean, someone should do the statistics right now.
No, someone did it. It's 10.2% of this movie is literally, that is the statistic. 10.2% of this movie is slow motion.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's the thing. Like, you know, what, love him or hate him, he has a style,
yes.
and that's part of it. And I'm not a huge fan of it. It doesn't add anything of substance to the movie.
For me, I think the epitome of this is when the Flash is introduced, and there's like a bagel stand on the street, and he does a slow-mo of a sesame seed.
The hamburger. It was a hamburger seed falling off of a hamburger. Yeah.
It's just like Snyder loves slow-mo ever since 300. Many of his movies use it. Some of it's effective, but with this, it just felt repetitive and nauseating after the 50th time we saw the Flash running in slow-mo.
And plus, you look at some of the visual. I mean, from my understanding, Steppenwolf looks a lot better.
Way better. Miles better. Miles better.
But, like, you know, like, just even, like, looking at Ray Fisher as Cyborg, like, you can tell that it's not very seamless.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's rough.
But a lot of that, for me, it has to do with, like, I mean, how much money he had $70 million, right, to do this movie again. So I mean, that's not a lot of money to redo CGI, like Cyborg, a totally CGI character. It was also kind of the main character of the original cut. I mean, it's hard to redo that, and you know, combine that with Snyder, who's, you know, I mean, this movie's gray. The movie's overall color is literally gray, which I always found interesting because 300 has some pretty nice use of colors, in a bunch of scenes. Sure. And ever since that movie, Snyder has been like, all my movies will now be gray. I've never understood that. And it definitely doesn't work here at all with a superhero movie. Superhero movies need to have more color with that. But that's not to say, because Whedon's cut had a lot of color, but it looked terrible as well. So sure. I'm not sure what the right answer is here.
It's hard to say, but this is what we have. And when we come back on the break, we will be giving our more in-depth thoughts of the cast and the screenplay of the film. Don't go anywhere.
This job looks perfect. It says you need a high school diploma. You've got one of those, right?
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
I got that.
Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Hart, what's going on? I'm leaving. Why? What did I do? Not enough. The pressure's too much. I quit. I get it. I can do better. Just please, don't leave.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to The Real Deal, with our review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, one of the big things about this movie is the ensemble cast, because, you know, essentially there was like movies building up to this, and you got like stars like Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher, Amy Adams, Jeremy Irons, everybody. And so I think the cast works to varying degrees. As I mentioned earlier with Jeremy Irons as Alfred, he's always such a great presence in this role. You know, he always brings something to this, and I really appreciate his take on the character. Very refreshing. And then, of course, you know, Ben Affleck, I guess.
Just in a bad suit.
You know, I didn't like Ben Affleck in this movie, which was interesting. I found him better. Yeah, it was better in Batman vs Superman. And I couldn't tell if he was just like bored or just not. He wasn't given really as much as he was in Batman vs Superman at all in this movie.
In both Justice Leagues, he's better than this. He's the organizer of the Justice League. He's not really doing anything on his own. He just says, "We got to do this."
He's kind of like Nick Fury in this movie,
shooting things with laser guns. That's really it.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much just Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury in this movie. He really is just Nick Fury as Batman. I mean, that's pretty much how he kind of. I mean, aside from the final battle where he races in with his Batmobile and blows a few things up.
Sure. No, I think that the thing with he's fine, but Gal Gadot, not directed by Patty Jenkins, is really kind of lackluster. As we mentioned before,
I never even liked her to begin with, and not even with Patty Jenkins' directing.
She's so good in Wonder Woman. No, I think that she just needs the right director, above her. But I think we can agree that Ezra Miller, Flash, is probably the most obnoxious character in the movie, and also because supposedly he was ad-libbing.
Well, the thing is, I think he was given free material from Snyder because Ezra Miller thought it was really funny. He said, "I like you as the Flash. Invent your own lines." And the thing is, if you have someone like Robin Williams, I always make the comparison in Aladdin, it's going to work. But Ezra Miller is not a comedian, and he's not funny, and the Flash is not meant to be like that. So everything is just so annoying, and his voice, you can't really control that, but it's just so nasally that it's just nothing's going for him at all.
Yeah.
So I just find him obnoxious, but there's a lot more they could have done with him.
He was just ad-libbing. I feel like a lot of his lines and jokes. His jokes were 100% like he made them up in his head on the spot. They were ad-libbed. Like they were not written into this movie like that. And it's not how Barry Allen is. It's not how the Flash is. It's just not how he talks.
And that kind of goes into the script, too, because I think, that obviously was scripted, but also I think the best character and one of the better performances in the movie was Ray Fisher as the Cyborg. Yes. Because I feel like the way everything comes together like it does a serviceable job, but like when I compare this to something like the Avengers, right? Everything in that movie feels so well defined in regards to them building this team, where it's like these guys are just coming together. You don't really get the dynamic as well. You get some of it, but I think out of all the characters, I think Cyborg got the most development, which supposedly was what was lacking. And
completely cut, not lacking. His entire story was cut out from the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, which is insane because you need his story in order for this story to work.
Sure, because he's such, without spoiling anything, he's such an integral part of the narrative.
Well, someone moving on, just one other thing, and we can go back to him.
Yeah.
Someone who was not given any time of day, even though this movie was 4 hours, was Aquaman, and that's the same.
Yeah,
he's just there. He's just
Aquaman is just there. Yeah,
everyone is, and then he drinks somewhat like just to like rid his problems, and that's it. That's really it. He really does nothing, but Cyborg was really good going back.
It's interesting. Like, you got a 4-hour movie, but what it seems to me is like there's no real banter between these characters like there was in Avengers. Like you don't really see them even like talking that much to each other. Like they're very focused on the mission at hand, and like there is no. I feel absolutely no chemistry at all with this team. None.
You get amazing conflict in like the Avengers between Iron Man and Captain America, and they're at odds, and then eventually something happens and they all have to like figure their stuff out. Where you never get that. It's just like, okay, let's get this done.
I think with this movie, and it's the same in both versions, the way they're gonna get chemistry is through the actions they have to complete for them, as Jacob just said. Every single time they accomplish something, I guess closer, but it's never said through verbal dialogue.
Yeah,
sure. And I think that was one of the biggest issues. Because I think another thing, it just feels like it feels fairly cohesive, but it's still a mess. I mean, it's a fun mess.
Yeah.
But especially for 4 hours, I feel like they could have gone so much more depth, especially with a character like Aquaman.
Wonder Woman too. She's really just there. She's making tea with Alfred. I mean, that's your way of learning more about her, and that seems fun. But like,
she had a movie too at that point, so like maybe that was. But even so, as I said with the Avengers argument, because this is the movie it should be compared to. I think the character dynamics weren't very well defined, and I think if that was the case, it would have made it, on that level. But to me, it just feels like a average comic book movie. And in 4 hours, I got through it. I broke it up a little bit though. But yeah, I mean, it just really could have been fleshed out even with all that.
Another minor thing that I needed to add in, and I want to say it now. Every single time Wonder Woman appeared on screen, her theme started with like chants and the guitar, and it was just so annoying. I mean, that's another thing. Very minor, but I just wanted to throw it in there.
It's going to be like a meme. It is pretty much a meme already, but yeah, every time her theme clashes with a lot of the music in the rest of the movie, so every time you hear it, it just kind of takes you out of it a little bit.
Yeah, there's motifs, and then there's just whatever that was. Yeah.
But regardless, when we come back, we are going to give our final thoughts on Justice League as well as our ratings. So don't move in your seat.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year, 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism, 1 in 68. I'm Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
To Maddie.
congrats on paying off all those student loans.
Finally, right?
How'd you manage that anyway?
I started tracking my spending, changed a couple of habits.
Wow, I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck right now. I don't even know how I'm doing it.
Well, have you tried saving a little?
I want to, but where's that money gonna come from? Bill collectors, they're the worst. Am I right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind.
Not home.
Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Welcome back to The Real Deal. Here we are with our final thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I guess I'll start off by saying, I kind of said it before, but it's fine for what it is. I appreciate it more for what it does for studio filmmaking and filmmakers themselves having this much creative control. But it's a mess, but one that is enjoyable to watch. And on that regard, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
That's a good rating. I mean, I'm very similar to him. I have some bias just because, as I said earlier, I saw the Whedon cut. So seeing the Snyder cut was a fresh breath of fresh air. So I thought it was really fun. The action set pieces were great, and there was moments that were actually heartfelt with a great score. Some of the soundtrack selections were weird. So the thing with the movie is it's 4 hours. The best stuff is awesome. The worst stuff is forgettable and shouldn't be there. But as Nathaniel just said, the fact that a studio gave all this creative freedom to someone who's going through a tragedy and to give him a second chance after he made 2 lackluster movies in the universe already, it's still one of the best DCU movies that I've seen. So I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. Highly recommend it if you have 4 hours to kill, but if not, you aren't missing a great movie, but it's still a fun 4 hours.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of giving him full creative process, I mean, there was a black and white version just released that actually fixes a lot of the visual issues that I had with it, like the CGI mostly. It actually makes it look way better because you can't actually tell the difference anymore. Considering it's in black and white, I mean, you kind of can, but not as much. Also, fix the colors of the movie, the black and white version does, because it's all black and white, and it's not just gray. I'm gonna give this movie, I think, a 7 out of 10. I'm a nerd. I enjoy the superhero stuff, and I actually always kind of liked Snyder's Man of Steel, which people hated because it's not at all like the comics, which is exactly why I liked it, because I hate Superman in the comics. I give this a 7 out of 10 because, I mean, yeah, it's a mess. There are definitely things that should not be in there, and there are characters that were more expanded upon, which was great, and then I felt like other characters were kind of just left in the dust. There wasn't really a good balance that, say, like a lot of Marvel movies, Avenger movies have, like Infinity War, which has so many characters, has a great balance of these characters. This movie does not have that.
One thing I want to add, fan service that is in there, there's some spoilers I will not get into, but some of the fan service is just awesome, like stuff that people have been waiting to see for decades.
Yes, yeah.
And it's done right this time. So
yeah, it really was done right, and also the aspect ratio, the 4:3 horizontal. I actually really liked it. I hate how it was presented, like this Snyder's vision of like 4:3 has been used before, guys. This isn't a new thing, but I really enjoyed it in a superhero movie. I liked seeing the vertical, like everything in the scene. It made it feel more like I don't know. It made it feel more like a comic book movie, which I enjoyed. Like a panel was being shown to me.
Without the blurbs, but still.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's our review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And before we go, we just wanted to bring up the next movie we'll be reviewing, which is Godzilla versus King Kong. And I guess I want to ask you guys, who do you think is going to win?
I mean, I think it's hard not to go with Godzilla. I mean, the name God's in his name, and he's bigger than Kong, has a lot more abilities. He breathes fire. I'm not going to go into the whole deal. I mean, we'll see the movie next week. But I think it's safe to say that Godzilla should win. But we'll see. They might go the Rian Johnson Last Jedi route and have King Kong win somehow and subvert our expectations.
Yeah, the real winners of this movie is going to be Warner Brothers and HBO Max, regardless. But I think if Godzilla loses, I'm going to be upset because I can't see him losing to King Kong. But I heard King Kong has a big CGI axe now, so who knows what's going to happen. I certainly don't.
Well, I won't say anything because I want to leave it up to you guys. How about you tweet us at The Real Deal WTOP and tell us who you think is going to win. And on that note, just want to thank you for tuning in tonight to our show, and stay tuned next week. And as always, keep it real.
Thanks, guys.